1,200 years old and built on 118 islands at the head of the Adriatic Sea, Venice is an engineering marvel and no stranger to floods. November 15, 2019. The picturesque, crisscrossing labyrinth of narrow canals is transformed into a watery hell. Travel vlogger Mark Felice is stranded as a ferocious high tide and strong winds pound the city.
This was a historic flood, the worst flood they had had in over 50 years and the 6th time in 1,200 years that the Basilica San Marco flooded. So it was huge.
St. Mark's Square turns into a swamp as floodwaters submerge the famed piazza in more than 3 feet of water. Jane DeMosto is a longtime resident of Venice.
It's important to remember that there are historical records of occasional floods from centuries ago, because the flooding is caused not by the tide, but by strong winds that push extra amount of water from the Adriatic Sea into the lagoon.
This combination of astronomical high tides and strong sirocco winds is called acqua alta and contributes to around 100 small floods that hit Venice every year. Another factor, low-lying Venice is built on top of unstable sediments and is slowly sinking.
There's 2 types of sinking, or scientifically we call it subsidence, which is just a few millimeters every decade, which is to do with the compaction of all the different mud layers. The other is caused by extraction of groundwater from the aquifers underneath the mud that's underneath Venice.
For hardy Venetians, small floods are an inconvenience.
When flooding was a relatively rare occurrence, it was managed merely by rinsing off the salt water of anything that was affected by the flooding and then letting it dry out.
But as this city of canals continues to sink and sea levels rise, on occasions, like in 2019, the acqua alta runs rampant.
The water was up to our ankles and then the knees and then almost the waist, and you see the dead rats flowing in the street. The one thing I remember the most is the odor, honestly, of the sewage in the water.
The flood is a catalyst to finish the MOSA project, an ambitious multi-billion-dollar flood protection system that begins in 2003.
I am Marcello Zanonato. I am in the team that control MOSE during the operations. People have a very high need of safety from MOSE.
Stationed between 3 inlets to the Venetian lagoon, Lido, Malamoca, and Chioggia, and connected by an artificial island, 78 retractable gates can be raised to stop a surge from sweeping into the lagoon and flooding the city.
MOSE is made to keep the level inside the laguna under the level that would be dangerous for Venice.
In October 2020, the barriers are put to the test as tides rise and winds pick up.
With such a tide height, we would have about 50% of Venice flooded.
I walked out and I was surprised to see there was no water in the streets. It was the first day that the mobile barriers had blocked the water from coming into the city.
The city of Venice breathes a collective sigh of relief. After almost 20 years of construction, the MOSA project offers the city a brighter future.
The 3rd of October was an incredible moment because the MOSE flood protection system actually stopped a real flood. This is a moment that we'd been waiting for. Venice's future depends on a functioning flood defense system.